Hello, and welcome to Time for Thought. If you're, I don't know why I just pointed at the board. That doesn't say Time for Thought. Anyway, if you're like me, then you find people fascinating. And me in particular, I find personality types really fascinating. Why some people are the way that they are, and why other people are different. Why I am the way that I am, and other people are not. Um, so for a long time, I've really kind of looked at my own experience and how I experience the world phenomenologically and tried to infer some things about how we think and what that might actually look like. So, the aim of this channel is going to be to try to give that knowledge to you, the viewer. I've thought about this for a lot of years and spent a lot of time on it, and I think I've come up with a mechanics of sorts for the cognitive functions that were first discussed by Jung. However, I kind of have a different take on that, and you'll see that pretty quickly. So I hope to make that a little firmer and a little more real and a little less abstract and a little less qualitative. Maybe we can make something that's a little more, if not strictly quantitative, which it's not, easier to recognize and evaluate in the world so that you can find out your type and you can easily type other people. So, without further ado, the first thing I would like to introduce you to is what is thought? Right? Because we all have thoughts, we all experience the world in thoughts, and it seems to be something that arises in consciousness, but it's not there when we're first born, right? But there's some moment in which you realize that you are, and you become conscious. So when does that happen? And what does it have to do with thought? Well, what I propose is that thoughts are actually the tying together of physical and conceptual phenomena. And that's what you observe as a thought. So we have the physical world, which we're all aware of. We touch things. Anything that we can deal with our senses really exists here in the physical world. And then we have the conceptual world, which is our understanding, and all our concepts populate that, right? And both of these worlds populated with objects. So I'm going to call a concept an object, just like a physical one, even though people will fight me on that, I'm sure, but it doesn't matter. We'll eventually get there. So in the physical world, obviously there's objects. In the conceptual world, there's also objects. We call them concepts. And what I propose that thought is whenever you produce a bridge, which we would call a symbol, right, that links these two together, whether that be a sound, right, or a particular image, whatever that is, whenever you have a thought, it's going to present itself to you as something that ties together concepts in the conceptual space and objects in the physical space. So when we first become conscious, there is the object of I that emerges, and we tie that to the body, which is this concept of amness. So the moment that this bridge occurs, we become aware of our existence in the world. Until then, these two things remain separate. And because of the lack of phenomenological juxtaposition between the two, and the lack of a comparative structure to produce an information, which is this link in the middle here, we don't experience it. But as soon as we make this link, we know that we are and we exist. Now, we're going to end up populating this with a nearly infinite number of objects, and we're going to end up populating this conceptual space with nearly an infinite number of concepts, and we're going to tie together more and more and more and more of those two things until they start to look more like a reflection than two individual domains. Now, not in every way. There's certainly going to be concepts that will not tie perfectly to the physical world, and there's going to be objects for which you don't have an adequate concept for. But in general, the congruence between the objects that we produce in these two fields, or experience in these two fields, is going to, in large part, dictate the psychological stability that we experience. So anyway, all of that said, it was a long-winded explanation to say that we have concepts and we have the physical world. We tie those two things together, those two things tied together always emerge as a symbol, like a word. When you think of a word, it's a sound, right? But it always relates to a piece of information. There's a concept tied to it too, or an image or something like that. But there's always going to be something that's going to produce something physical and informational, right? You're going to have those two things present at the same time. So anyway, with that, that's going to be our first lesson. And in the next lesson, what we're going to talk about is why I think that influent and effluent should be the terms to supplant introvert and extrovert. I think introvert and extrovert really are polluted with a lot of subjective kind of qualification. And I think influent and effluent are going to give us a much better idea of what's going on. So I'll explain that in the next video. Thank you.